Hello, thank you for joining me again today. This is another professional development session. My name is Patrick Hackett, and I'm the one who made this slideshow. Um, the PowerPoint is about culturally responsive teaching practices. So let's go ahead and get right into it. What is something in your culture/background that defines you or that you would love to share? For me, mi cultura, being a mixed Mexican-American man, these are some of my cultural experiences I love to share. First and foremost, everybody's favorite part of cultural, in my opinion, is comida or food, from flan to tamales, tacos, empanadas, and the basics like rice and beans. I love it all. Some of my favorite memories are making tamales with mi madre, which is my mom, and my abuela, which is my grandma, around the holidays. As you can see from me using some Spanish words in my writing, I speak Spanish, or yo hablo español, but I'm just shy of being experienced enough to say I'm fluent. Being a mixed person in the US, it took me until college to embrace the whole of my heritage. So some learning objectives, or what I would like for you guys to take away from this, would be to understand and recognize culture and culturally responsive teaching practices, examples of culturally responsive practices and how to implement them, the importance of culturally sustaining teaching and how to incorporate it into the classroom, the impact of CRPs on students and why it is beneficial to implement CRPs in your classroom. Okay. So what is a culturally responsive practice? Defining what it is can help us know how to implement it. Okay, so culture is the customs, arts, social institutions, and achievements of particular nation, people, or other social groups, from Oxford Languages. Culturally responsive teaching practices are pedagogy grounded in teachers' practice of cultural competence. Culturally responsive teaching incorporates and centers unique student experiences and identities, supporting educators to build learning partnerships that result in increased student engagement and ownership of learning. Components of culturally responsive teaching are affirmation, validation, cognition, and processing. I will go into these more in the next slides. Affirmation and validation. So for affirmation, I recognize and accept you as you are. I understand and nurture your multiple identities, and none of these aspects of you are in conflict to me. This would be us as teachers, what we would say, or at least make the students feel about how we feel towards them. This kind of ties in with Freeman and Freeman calling English language learners emergent bilinguals to affirm their whole identity and recognize the wealth of knowledge they already have entering the classroom. And then in terms of validation, we need to validate students' experiences of the world by acknowledging the socio-political context we live in, teach the truth about power, politics, history, and context in developmentally appropriate ways, and use these issues as tools of instruction and discourse. So this is not the part where we tell it like it is. This is the part where we tell it like it is and not dodge the difficult or uncomfortable conversations of the truth. Okay, so cognition and processing. Cognition, use students' culture as a reference point for helping them understand concepts. This is where learning theory, neuroscience, and culturally responsive teaching all meet up. This helps to build connections with their family, community, and support systems to help build a wealth of connections that can be made in class. So for processing, we need to help students hold on to it. So we need to find a way to help them hold on to the information that they're learning. Repetition and collaboration can be great ways to allow students to cement new information. Call and response, music, movement, and storytelling are all culturally relevant ways to create neural pathways. And creating things such as cultural books, cultural alphabets, and posters can be a great way to celebrate and display the students' hard work about their culture. So strategies for creating a culturally responsive classroom. Get to know your students. This was a big part of my last professional development slideshow. So we need to commit to knowing your students academically, socially, and emotionally. We need to learn about their families, cultures, and interests. We have to ask questions and talk with parents, community members, and colleagues. Reading books, watching movies, and listening to music of that cultural origin. Make home visits or create opportunities for students to share and celebrate their home and family traditions and cultures. Be aware of different worldviews and learn about the collectivist versus individualistic continuum. Be explicit and talk to your students about code switching and help students know when and why it is appropriate while valuing their home culture and language. So code switching is switching between the languages, maybe if there's a cognate or if they have somebody else in the classroom who knows the same language they do. Okay, so build on the life experiences of your students. Current real-world examples help students connect to the curriculum, allow for deeper engagement, and help students make connections with their individual community, national, and global identities. The classroom can be a space for students to develop and explore their socio-political consciousness. This goes back to the idea of making the classroom learner-centered. The student should be the driving force of curriculum, learning, and inquiry. Create a classroom learning community. Encourage students to care for one another and be responsible for each other inside and outside of the classroom. Design a safe and welcoming classroom environment. Students respond cognitively and emotionally to classroom aesthetics. Let students know that the classroom space is theirs to create together. Hold academic standards and expectations for all your students. This one is extremely crucial. Enthusiastically encourage all students to reach those standards and beyond. Treat all students as competent in developing focus on fostering a growth mindset. So I can instead of I can't, or I can, just not yet, or I will be able to if I keep trying. Design lessons with your most underserved students in mind. Also, understand your own cultural identity and its consequences. Rigorously examine your cultural behavior patterns, especially when it comes to classroom management and discipline. Be yourself with students, honest, caring, and human. So this is another really important part of the country we live in, especially, or anywhere really in the world, to understand our implicit biases before we can adequately then serve these diverse students. So how many languages do you need to know to support emergent bilinguals in your classroom? As a tip, allowing students to use their native language in class helps build both languages proficiencies and academic content knowledge. Never force students to learn in one language if they are English language learners. Sorry, I skipped one there. So all you need is just one language to teach these students your own. There's so much language support in schooling today, be it a translator, bilingual aid, teacher, admin, the internet, or even app translators. There are plenty of ways to get support in supporting emergent bilinguals. Another tip would be you don't need to know another language to teach and support English language learners or emergent bilinguals. You would be surprised how far just learning a phrase, word, or saying in their language will go in proving to them you care about them. The Google Translate app can repeat anything you say in up to 90 languages, from German and Japanese to Czech and Zulu, so I feel like that is a very good fundamental translator app that every teacher, and really everybody should have. Another tip, don't be embarrassed to use translators or to ask for help. Being brave enough to admit you need help is a strength, not a weakness. Also, don't be embarrassed to ask questions of your students, colleagues, or admin. So I loved this image, so that's why I dedicated the whole slide to it. So what is culturally responsive sustaining education? It is centering and valuing students' cultures and identities, using rigorous and relevant curriculum and anti-oppressive teaching practices, building strong positive relationships between students, families, and school staff, and then supporting students to develop the knowledge, skills, and vision to transform the world towards liberation and inclusion, right? Okay, so why is this also important? As a teacher, one of our fundamental requirements is to create a safe, accepting, and inclusive classroom environment for all students. Put that in caps. In my opinion, it boils down to whether you are willing to look past individual difference and can embrace your humanity. All these practices call for is authenticity, humanity, and optimism. with those at the core of your functioning as a teacher, the rest will come naturally. Okay, a simple gesture. You don't need to know any other languages or other cultures to be inclusive. All it takes is an open mind, willing to learn, and a caring attitude to treat all students with equity. These practices can transform a classroom into a community, a student into an empowered learner, and a teacher into a sort of Socratic guide in the classroom. Another friendly tip, being an advocate for inclusion and diversity can only serve to make you a better person, teacher, and member of society. There is nothing but positives to incorporating culturally responsive practices. From outsider to star, you'll be amazed how students will flourish when you accept them and invite them to take ownership of their learning. All students are capable of learning. It is up to us, teachers, to figure out how we can actualize the students' academic potential. Then here are my references, and I thank you very much for joining me today. I apologize for certain typos or issues in the recording. I'm only human, and I appreciate you still following along and joining me today. And I hope that what you've learned here can be useful, or maybe even these resources here at the end can prove to help serve you in your process and journey as a teacher. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a nice day.